Hey everyone, we want to welcome you to the Deeper Dive podcast of Hopevale Church. This is where we take the message from the weekend and keep the conversation going during the week. I'm Dan Davis, senior pastor here at Hopevale Church. We're in the Great Lakes Bay region of mid-Michigan, Saginaw, Bay City, surrounding communities. And today I am joined by our Bay City campus pastor, Nate Murray. Hey, Nate.
Hey, Dan. Good to be here.
It is, yeah, man, it's great to have you. I can't wait to talk about Sunday and your experience in Bay City and what we had going on in Saginaw and the kickoff of a new series. And we'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, these last couple weeks have been kind of like divide and conquer, right? We did Serve Your City, and Bay City had a great experience. We heard from Liz on the podcast a couple weeks ago. But then you guys had baptisms in the John Glenn High School natatorium. That's the sophisticated name, but in their pool, right?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, and I got to see a video kind of put together on that. It looked phenomenal. I'd love to hear about it and just how it impacted you as campus pastor and what you felt like it did for the church too.
Yeah, it was a great day. I think as you said in the message yesterday, we've just had a string of just really great Sundays for different reasons that, you know, goes all the way back to Palm Sunday. And for our baptism, I was really impacted last summer by going to a baptism that was a smaller one. It was some Hopevale folks, but it wasn't an official Hopevale baptism. And it was outside. And one of the things that really stood out to me about it was that each person getting baptized had someone that was able to just speak some encouragement and some life over them. So when we got approved to use the pool, which was a big deal, that was awesome that Bangor Schools allowed us to use that pool. So that made the process simpler for us, where we didn't have to bring in a portable baptistry and get it filled up and all that. So instead, we got to put some energy toward, can we invite some of these folks in that love the people getting baptized and they can just speak a word of encouragement over them. And man, it was special. It was a really neat time. It was almost like a tangible view of what we imagine and what we're told takes place in heaven, you know, when people come to faith.
Yeah.
Because there was a community surrounding these people getting baptized. There were people there that knew them, had seen what Jesus was doing in them. And, you know, we teach baptism as an outward expression of what Jesus is doing in us. So to have someone there that can speak to that and say, this is what I see Jesus doing in you, it was just so special. And then the people, if they wanted to, had a chance to speak up as well, the ones getting baptized. So it was just a special day. It felt like a family affair, like a family reunion.
Yeah.
And the cheering was my favorite part. Each time everybody got baptized as they came up out of the water, just the whole natatorium went crazy. So it was a lot of fun. It was a huge encouragement. We were excited that we got to use the pool, but man, Jesus did way more than just letting us use the pool. It was a special day for us.
You know, the video that I watched, and I saw all that take place, although couldn't have been as good as the live thing. But, you know, what struck me, Nate, is, you know, the ordinances, right? Baptism, Lord's Supper. It is a me experience, but it is also a we experience, right? And I felt that. I just felt that coming through the video that I watched of just how meaningful that must have been with your church family there. And just to see, again, the encouragement and the celebration was phenomenal. So
it really was. And it was a great way to almost, I feel like the baptism day launched this series.
Okay.
Because as I talked to the people getting baptized ahead of time, it really is a public proclamation. You know, that we, in the message on the baptism day, we looked at Jesus getting baptized. And there were two key parts there. There's this public proclamation of like, this is what I'm here to do. This is what's going on. And then there's this other piece of the Father's heart toward Jesus. And so we looked at that going into the baptism, that this is saying, man, this is what's happening in me. This may have been a private encounter up until now, but now I'm making this encounter I'm having public. And so that's special for those that are getting baptized. And then it's also special to understand the heart of the Father toward us, that, you know, Paul teaches our life is hidden with Christ. So when God looks down on us, he's not angry or frustrated any of those kinds of things. When he looks at us as believers, he sees his son Jesus. So his attitude toward us is the same attitude he had towards Jesus when Jesus was baptized,
man.
where the heavens part and he looks down and he says, "That's my child. I love my child, and I'm so proud of my child." And the room, the natatorium, had that feel to it, like, man, this is really good. This is not just a earthly thing. This is like heaven participating, and this is a big moment for these people as they make public what's going on. Some of them invited friends to take part in that. We have people in Bay City that, as they come to have a personal relationship with Jesus, they may have been religious in their background or their upbringing, but when they have a personal relationship with Jesus and they take that step of faith to get baptized, it's a big deal for them. It's a big deal in their family. For some of them, there may be a price to that. They may pay a personal cost to saying, I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and it's different than what I understood growing up. And so for our people, when they do that, it's a big deal to take that step. So anyway, we felt all of that in the room. It was a special day, and know you guys had a special day here in Saginaw
We
too.
did. You know, Nate, I got to tell you, and maybe this is the not so smooth segue, right? But when you talked about this baptism passage of Jesus being baptized and the affirmational words of the Father, right? This is my Son whom I love, in him I am well pleased, right? And it happens at the beginning of his ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but have my mind flash to what I said yesterday, that sent ones are loved ones.
Mm.
And it's, you know, it's so easy to come to a passage like the Good Samaritan going, oh, I need to be kinder. I need to care
critic.
more,
Yeah.
right? But it starts out of a place of love and affirmation. And those words have always really resonated in my heart, not just as a pastor, but as a son of the Heavenly Father. And it's interesting, too, that those words are repeated at the Mount of Transfiguration as well, you know, as we're getting to the home stretch of Jesus's ministry, right? And, you know, you and I and our staff, we talk a lot about identity, right? And who we are in relationship to our Heavenly Father because of Jesus and the life of Jesus we have. So all that to say, we moved to this series called Sent Next Door, and we brainstormed this a bit, we dreamed it a bit, we workshopped it a bit. And one of the things I love, you know, Kathy and I often do is like, so where did this come from? You know, why did we feel like this was a good series for the church at this time, and why does it matter?
I know for me, the genesis of it, I've really been thinking through what does evangelism look like in 2022. I remember growing up in the church. I grew up Southern Baptist. We had like outreach nights, you know, we learned different evangelism strategies. And we did, you know, we would go knock on doors. You know, we had prospect lists.
Yeah.
And we would, had one night of the week where our church would rally together and go knock on doors. And the goal was to introduce people to Jesus. And there was a time for that, and it you know, worked to whatever measure of success at that time. But I think evangelism looks different now, and so much has happened in our world. It feels like 20 years of events have happened in 2 years, right?
Yes.
And so what worked then, the strategies that were successful in the past may not be successful now. So thinking through what does evangelism look like in our modern time with everything going on in our world, that's kind of the genesis of it. So I started jumping into some stuff that was really centered around that, some stuff from Timothy Keller and a few others that really said, what does that look like? And then there was just a transformational process that happened in me as I started looking at some of these resources, and especially contexts where the culture was post-Christian, which means they understand Christianity and they've decided they don't want it. So when we think of Michigan, especially this region of Michigan, we tend to think of it as a Christian area. And some of the surveys back that up, but there's a lot of religion, not necessarily a lot of relationship. And so it really applies in our area that most of the people that we're going to encounter have heard the name Jesus before. They've probably been to church. They may have been raised in the church, whether it's a Catholic church, Lutheran church, or some other evangelical denomination. But a lot of them don't necessarily have a relationship with Jesus. It's not something they've ever been presented with as an option or pursued personally. And so thinking through all of that, that's where the genesis came from in my heart was, can we look at what evangelism looks like now without using the word evangelism?
Yeah, right.
But more importantly, what does it mean to invite our friends and neighbors to know and follow Jesus? And what's the backing for that? And then can we give people, along with just the theological challenge of what we've been sent to do to introduce our friends and neighbors to Jesus, can we give them some practical tools to do that too, where we can present the foundational truth, but then also say, now here's how you do it, which is the heart of Luke 10 anyway.
Well, isn't it? Yeah. So, Gal, there are so many parallels that are running through my mind. What you said there about people's understanding of church, religion, God, and Jesus, right? And we're not going to go down this tangent too far, right, and talk about the word deconstruction and whatever. But, part of sharing the good news, which is, evangelism, that's the root of the Greek word, right? Proclamation of good news, is dismantling people's misconceptions, which is really what Jesus was trying to do with this expert in the law who just had it all figured out, right? And so it really is important because that's the whole thing, right? The heart of the good news of Jesus, he is not here, he is risen, he is the way, the truth, and the life. That has not changed, but how people understand that, how it impacts their heart has changed. And like you said, there are, regional influences, familial influences, cultural influences. And a lot of it is, you often see the ministry of Jesus. He has to take people down a path of unlearning
Yep.
before they relearn. So yeah, I think that's just so good. And it really is, Nate, as you talk about this scary word evangelism, it's just a reminder of our calling as the church, right? And worshipers and witnesses. And as I tried to kind of tee up yesterday, this is just a further extension of that John 20:21 theme for us as a church, right? To know where Jesus is sending us, and this whole idea that this is an invitation and a challenge for everyone, not just super Christians and pastors and
I think if we can
and the like.
demystify it,
Right.
there's no pressure.
Right.
And I think, I think back to those nights where we would go hit, door to door. There was pressure there. It was like, we got to get somebody, we got to talk to somebody. I got to use all this stuff I've learned. I've got to be able to share the truth. Am I going to say it right? There's just all this pressure. Nobody intended to put pressure, but that's what I left with was like, man, got to make this happen. Got to exert some control over this and win some people to Jesus, as if it's something that we can do apart from him. And so if with this series over these next few weeks, if we can demystify it and just make it what it is, which is just a natural part of our relationship with Jesus, to share what's happening in our life and to look for needs around us and run to meet those needs, to be mindful of who Jesus has put us with in our lives, and to be willing to just talk about it like it's a normal thing, not this thing that's siloed off to the side on Sunday. Hopefully, if we can demystify it and then give people some practical tools, then their approach toward it a month from now will be very different than it was a couple of days ago.
Oh man, that is so good. You use the word pressure. I think back to some of my past and as a young adult and college students and conferences and witnessing days, and we just have this image of coming back at the end of the day and people standing up and sharing their success stories.
Oh yeah.
And there I am going, I am the biggest loser ever.
Right.
No one wanted to talk to me, or the person who did talk to me had 8 questions I couldn't answer. And and it's like, okay, not everyone's going to get it. I understand. But you said like the pressure that it's like somehow we've got to do the right sales pitch at the right. Yeah. So I think we all have to kind of go through our own deconstruction, so
Yeah,
to speak,
peel it apart,
and
yeah.
peel apart and get what is the heart of it, and how do we get there? And so, I think you and I set off, Mike. Like one of the challenges today is not to just dump the whole series
Right.
in one episode, because I know you and I were going to probe there a little more. So let's back up a little bit and let's just talk about the passage yesterday. I was telling Pastor Pete off mic as well that this isn't the first time I've preached the parable of the Good Samaritan, but I'm so grateful for how the Holy Spirit, speaks to us anew and afresh to where we're living, to, where we are in our walk and our growth in Christ, and just really felt that. So as you encountered the parable again, what hit you like this time around? It's kind of awkward, like either what I said or just as you're hearing it, right? And as you thought, boy, this is really what's speaking to where we are and what I want to see happen in Bay City, both with our church and in that community.
I think, because we talked about it, I knew a lot of what you were going to say,
Yeah.
right? But man, when you presented the other character in the story that we ignore,
Yeah.
that, again, if you want to talk about identity, it starts with the understanding that what Jesus has done for us, and that when we were lost and beat up and left on the side of the road by life, by this
Yeah.
world, it was Jesus that came along and met us where we were at and cleaned us up and gave us not only what we needed now, but what we would need down the road. He, that was a beautiful reminder to me that the function of me doing this, the function of me being a good neighbor, is based on the fact that Jesus was that to me. So again, it's not about my ability, what I can accomplish.
Totally.
It's all about him. It's about what he's done and what he is doing, and the fact that he never stops working to draw people near to the Father. And thank God that he did that for me. And so this sharing of my faith is an outflow of that. Like, I'm just blown away that he did it for me, and I know the difference it made for me. So why wouldn't I tell you about it? But I loved that part. That was a beautiful reminder, I think, as we start the series of it. It begins with him, it's sustained by him, and it's completed by him. So again, the pressure's off. So I loved that piece of it. It really encouraged me as I was sitting there listening to it in the service.
And it dawned on me kind of even in real time yesterday going, this is the continuity, right? We spent the first 3 months going through Galatians, which is this anthem of grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So everything we're talking about comes from a place of grace, not merit, grace, not works, grace, I need to try harder, and it really is, and so Paul, whether it's in Galatians or elsewhere, right? I mean, you were dead, you've been made alive, right? And it is. And then, it was interesting too, and you don't want to like go too far when you're explaining passages, but when you think about Jesus being our Good Samaritan, being upside of the road, this idea of religion and judgmental people passing us by, I'm like, I think some people have probably felt that, right? And it's like their encounter, their experience with professional religion, with esteemed people, it's just like, God, they had nothing for me. And that it would be different, right? Yeah, so that spoke to me too, obviously, so it's neat to hear that impacted you. Yeah.
And I think, exactly what you just said, that if you use that word deconstruction, it's peeling apart my practical experience with religion from what it means to have a relationship with Jesus. And it can be harder based on our circumstances to do that for one person than another. But just thinking through our neighbors, that, is all of our friends at Hopevale, as we think through the neighbors that we have in our life, being a part of the process of them peeling that apart of, I may move into the neighborhood, and if people find out I'm a believer based on their own experience, they're like, okay, what's this gonna be like? And we have the opportunity to live out an authentic faith in a way where they can see more of the relationship with Jesus than the, judgmental attitudes of religion. So yeah, and I love that way of looking at it. Like they didn't have anything for me. And we Kathy recommended a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, or if we save it for when Kathy's in the room.
She'll want to talk about it, I'm sure. But yeah,
But
go ahead.
we'll preview it.
Okay.
We'll whet the appetite. But yeah, there's an element of that where it can be difficult for the people that we're sent to wrap their mind around everything that comes with faith. But they can wrap their mind around us and our relationship with them and what Jesus can do through us with them. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, definitely too. So, you and I have talked a little bit too, and again, maybe it's for now, maybe it's for later, about rethinking neighbor, and unpacked a little bit about how the word Samaritan impacted people back then versus today, right? And I mean, our ministry center is like spitting distance from the Good Samaritan Rescue mission in Bay City, right? But this whole idea of people we, look down and despise and kind of air quote the unlikeliest of heroes, right? But I don't know, I think the thing that hit me in unpacking it too is this expert of the law asking Jesus, who is my neighbor, when he already had the answer in mind of a really tightly defined circle of, what did I say? Looks like me, talks like me, believes like me, votes like me, right? I mean, it's just, that's my neighbor. And so as long as I love them, and just how Jesus kind of came to explode all those kind of categories. And I know, again, whether we do it now or later, I don't know. But I know, God's really been speaking to you about that very thing as well, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it more in a couple of weeks. But I do think we need to wrestle with the question from a pure motive to Jesus, who is my neighbor? So the religious leader there, the expert in the law, what his motive was not pure when he's asking that question.
Yes, totally.
Right? So in a different sort of way, I think throughout this series, my hope is that we will all ask Jesus with a pure heart, with an openness to receive whatever he has to give us, who is my neighbor? We tend to think of our neighbor as someone who lives in close proximity to us, who is a lot like us. When we think of our neighbors, that's generally who we think of. But I think Jesus has a different definition in mind when he encourages us to love our neighbor as ourself. When he's thinking through neighbors, he's got a wider definition than we do. And I think we need to wrestle with that. What I've loved about our focus as a church going back to September, about helping everyone who calls Hopevale their church home know where Jesus is sending them. It's causing wrestling. It really is. This internal wrestling with God, really wrestling with the question, wrestling with the answer to the question. I think we get scared of that, and that's holy ground. When we can wrestle with God with something, that's where faith grows.
Totally.
It's this intimate space where we can be honest with God about our questions, and we can be open to what the answer might be. And we may not like the answer, and then we can struggle with that and wrestle with God on what his answer is. But I've loved that holy struggle that's played out in so many people's hearts since September, when we started asking that question of, where's Jesus sending you? And in a similar fashion, if we can wrestle with that question of who is my neighbor, I think there's divine work to be done in that space of asking the question and then waiting for the answer with an open heart of, man, who do you have in mind when you tell me to love my neighbor, Jesus? Who do you have in mind?
Yeah.
And help enlarge my perspective so that I'm not excluding anyone from, who you have in mind when you're talking about my neighbors. So we'll definitely unpack it a little bit more especially as we talk about expanding our circles and what that looks like, building some bridges, that kind of thing. But I think it's really healthy just to start with the simple question, Jesus, tell me who my neighbor is.
Right. Where the people residentially next door That's not a incorrect answer,
No.
but it probably is an incomplete answer.
Hey, there you go. Very good.
Right?
Well
yeah,
said.
yeah, definitely. And I'm really touched, Nate, when you talk about the wrestling, right? Because I think that's really where beauty emerges from honest faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? I'm reading that parable and the three people. It's like, yeah, I've been that
Oh yeah,
passerby.
I am
right?
that. Yeah, yeah,
Right. I am that man. Yeah. And so I think that's awesome. Right. And again, I think part of the answer is just going back again. Sent ones are loved ones, sent ones are loved ones. I was the one by the side of the road. I was the one that Jesus showed great mercy to. Right. And it's like, okay, that's where it starts, and from there. Yeah.
yeah. And that if you put yourself in the shoes of the person on the side of the road and Jesus being your good Samaritan, I think one of the things we have to wrestle with internally before we can start thinking through loving our neighbors is we are worthy of love. Think about that. Yeah. Like what led you to the side of the road? Like what
Yeah.
choices led you to be harassed and helpless on the side of the road? And what are your thought processes as you're sitting on the side of the road? Like, I know so many people, myself included, that is those distinguished folks walked by, they'd be like, I don't deserve their help.
Oh, wow.
This is all my fault.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This is, I'm getting what I deserve. And then Jesus comes along. So not only does he help him, but then it's the process of receiving that love that's really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Of seeing themselves as worthy of love. If we don't see ourselves as worthy of love, how do we see anyone as worthy of love, right? We have to receive God's love to really be vessels of his love for other people. So I think that's that element of sent ones or loved ones that don't run past that. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm loved. Sure. Yeah, I get it. But no, really think about that. You are loved.
Yeah.
Receive God's love, and that that piece may be the part that people really need to wrestle with before if they get that by the end of the series, then God will take care of the neighboring stuff down the road. But yeah, you are loved and you're worthy of that love. Jesus has made you worthy of love, no matter what you felt in the past, no matter how unworthy you think you are. Reality is you are worthy of love because Jesus has made you worthy.
So here I am. I'm hearing you say those words. I'm in my late 50s. I've been doing ministry for over 3 decades, and I am still journeying through that,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I do too.
That
all the
Jesus,
time. Yeah.
Jesus doesn't just love the best parts of me.
Right.
He loves all parts of me.
Mm-hmm. He met you in the midst of your sin,
Yeah.
not after you cleaned yourself up.
Yeah, right?
Not after you figured it all out. He met you in the midst of your sin. And it was there that you were worthy of his help in the midst of your sin. But yeah, receive that love. And then imagine the people, your neighbors, and where they may be at and what they're feeling. And that's why it's so important for you not only to receive it, but then to be a vessel, because they need to go through that process too of being found worthy.
And you know what, Nate? I made the comment yesterday too that it doesn't take a professional therapist to realize that we're surrounded by a lot of beaten up people, not just physically and literally, but spiritually and emotionally. And I've had conversations this past week with a couple people in the church world outside of Hopevale, and that story, that theme is just so apparent. And beaten up people present themselves in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just the people asking for help. You've probably heard this statement before, like hurt people hurt people.
Oh yeah.
And some of the people in our lives that are the most hurting are the most hurtful, right? And I think it takes grace. I think it takes the discernment of the Spirit to understand that, right? And to actually, and then I so don't have this in myself, to then have compassion, and not out of judgmental superiority, you know,
Right.
but just go, wow, 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 where is all this venom coming from? Where is all this hurt coming from that's just being projected, you know, on me or to the people I see around that, right? And it's just, it really is.
Yeah,
And-
it goes back to that passage of Jesus getting baptized, and 3 of the 4 gospel accounts record the same exact thing. And the details are important, so they record not only Jesus getting baptized and what leads up to that, but then 3 of the 4 record the Heavenly Father's reaction to it. When you get 3 out of 4 all recording the same details of an event in Jesus' life, 3 years worth of stuff that they try to cover, and all 3 of them can't, you know, they cover the same thing. That's a big blinking sign for us to pay attention to that. So the followers of Jesus wanted to make sure that those
Yes.
reading their letters got the message
Right.
that this was the Father's attitude towards
Oh,
his
man.
son. And as we understand who we are in Jesus, who he is in us, that we're hidden with him, that the Father's attitude towards us becomes the same as his attitude towards Jesus, that we're just so loved. And it's not just that we're loved, but that he's proud of us.
Yeah.
That's like taking it to another level. There's people in my life that I love, but I'm not proud of them, you know? Like, they've got all my love. I'll love them till the day I die, but I don't know that I would say I'm proud of them, you know? But my boys,
Yeah.
oh man,
Yeah.
like, there's nothing they will ever do that will make me stop loving them.
And I think what you're talking about here is it intersects with the whole freedom idea of Galatians.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's who you are. So I will never stop loving my boys no matter what they do. And I will never not be proud of them no matter what they do, because I know who they are.
Right.
I know their heart.
Yeah.
And they may make bad choices at some point in their life, but I will always love them and I will always be proud of them because I understand what's going on inside them. So even if things externalize in ways that are not great, I know their heart. And that's the way the Father looks at us. I know their heart. So they may externalize some stuff in ways that are not great, but I know their heart. I love them and I am proud of them. That's my child. That's claiming,
Oh,
claiming publicly. So there's a public proclamation to getting baptized, but then the Father's reaction to us in that moment is a public proclamation. That's my child.
yes.
I love my child.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the freedom that comes with that, knowing that the Father's relationship and thoughts toward me are not dictated by what I do, but instead they're dictated by who I am, who I've been made by Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Then all of a sudden, what I do is a response to what's been done for me. I don't have to. We talk about this a lot in Bay City with our team because we want people to serve in abundance, and we don't want people to feel compelled or obligated or stressed out or anxious about serving. And so one of the things we emphasize is we're not made to create divine resources, right?
Yeah.
We're made to distribute them. We get caught up in trying to create something we can't create sometimes. So when we encounter the person on the side of the road,
Yeah.
there's times we feel pressure like I have to save this person. I have to do all this stuff. I have to give this person everything that they need. And a lot of the time we can walk into that situation. We come upon somebody on the side of the road and we're like, I don't have it. I don't have it today.
Yeah.
I don't have what they need. I don't have the time, the energy, the money. I don't have any of the things this person needs from me. But when you understand you're not called to create divine resources, you just get to distribute them. Man, the pressure's off because it's all right. Jesus has brought me into an encounter with someone that's in desperate need in whatever way. It may be relationally, it may be physically, it may be in a practical sort of way, but he will give me everything I need. I don't have to give them what I've got because they're going to get what he has through me. So all I have to do is distribute what he's going to give me. So then the pressure's off. It's not, how in the world am I going to help this person? But instead it's, there are limitless resources available. All I have to do, to go back to the word you use, is be available.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just have to be available. And if I'm available, Jesus will do it through me. And he'll do it in spiritual ways and emotional ways. And he'll also do it in practical ways.
Yeah. And, you know, I love that word abundance. And this is the life with a capital L that we're talking about. And, you know, to bring up that dreaded E word, evangelism, right? You know, even as you say that, it's like, I think sometimes we feel like it's all on me and it's all on this one opportunity, when in reality, the most people that I talk to is that God works through multiple people in multiple situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our openness is, what do you want me to do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, ministering out of those divine resources. So let me kind of pivot towards the end of yesterday's message, and, you know, talked about just the posture of being sent next door, availability, awareness, action, right? Use me, Lord. Show me, Lord. Move me, Lord. Any of those, you know, hit you particularly and that you want to kind of talk more about? Or
I loved all of it. I think it's just that having ears to hear what Jesus is teaching us, having eyes to see where he's already at work. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's, how do I recognize where he's already working so that I can join him in what he's already doing? He never stops working. He never stops working to draw people near to the Father. So knowing that, looking at the landscape of our life, the power of where we've been put, the people we've been put with, what is he at work doing in their lives? And again, it's not on me to control this process for them. I just get to play a part in it. I just get to contribute to the overall team effort here. So I think all of that, the availability, the awareness, the action, it comes together with like, all right, what opportunity are you serving up for me to show kindness, for me to sit in someone's pain with them, for me to just recognize a practical need and jump to meet that need, to do the little things in powerful ways, I think is the way you worded it yesterday. I think so. There wasn't an isolated part of it. It's all of it together. It's just, Jesus, what are you teaching me in this? What are you teaching me in this for my neighbors? What are you at work doing in this for my neighbors, for my family, my friends, my neighbors? It's those questions that will lead us back to dependence on him, to recognize what he's already doing.
Yeah, that's good. So we call this on the podcast cutting room floor, like stuff I wanted to say but didn't have enough room in the message, right? So I'm going to like spill this and then you can react to it.
Okay.
Been thinking a lot about availability, and you know, it's interesting. I've heard that I'm going to use an analogy, get to my point. Like, you know, if you're trying to see a doctor these days, or you're trying to see a mental health specialist these days, they're booked solid, right? Months in advance. They have no availability, right? And we talk about being available from a schedule standpoint, and their schedule is packed. And I think there is an element of us with availability. It could be our schedule, but it just could be our hearts, our minds, and just having no margin at all, right? So availability is not just, do I have the time, but do I have the heart space? Do I have the emotional energy? And it led me really, I mean, just to be honest, kind of down this rabbit hole of like, what am I filling my life with? And is it helping me or hindering me from being available? And, you know, to be honest, I thought about like social media and how it influences us and maybe clutters our life and hardens our hearts and makes us less available. And I realize, right, I mean, I'm an empty nester, so, you know, from a time and energy standpoint, you know, I've got a little more room than maybe where you guys are at in your phase of life. But I really think part of availability is how we live our lives, how we walk with the Lord. Like, I think sometimes I'm the priest or the Levite who walks on the other side because I just either don't have any time space or heart space to deal with it.
Hmm.
And I just wonder if part of being sent next door and being available is not just what we choose to do, but maybe what we choose not to do. And again, this is not like some legalistic rant about here are the 10 things you shouldn't do, but it's
Right.
just a sense of like, is my life over cluttered that I'm not available? Yeah. So what do you think about that?
It's really good. Oh, there's so many directions
I
I'd love to
know.
go in. I think we are available. It's just a matter of what we're available to,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So I think a good place to start would be, what am I available to right now?
Yeah.
I've been given availability because I'm breathing, I'm living life. I'm making myself available to a lot of different things. So what am I making myself available to? Not just the simple things like you were talking about on a practical level. There's the social media, there's the news consumption, there's the all that stuff. But then on a heart level,
Yeah.
what am I making myself available to? I'm making myself self available to negativity, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making myself available to criticism. I'm making myself available to my own internal struggle of like, maybe my inner critic is so loud
Yeah.
that I'm not judging you because I'm judging myself so harshly. We are available as people.
Right.
So what are we making ourselves available to? And if we'll identify those things that are leading to death for ourselves and for
Yes.
others, and that's where we could start carving out some space is, all right, what am I making myself available to that's not full of life, and what's not pointing myself and others towards Jesus? And then we can cut that stuff out pretty quick.
That's
And then-
pretty good because then I think the corollary to that is, and are these things softening or harden my heart towards my neighbor? Right.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we can't control everything that
Right.
bombards us, right?
Right.
But some things,
Definitely.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What a great place to
yeah.
ponder on as we finish.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that's it. I mean, I just love how this service concluded with that available song, which is very personal and meaningful for me, but I think for our church as well, right? Because it's just use me, right? Use me. And then, like I shared at the end of the Saginaw service, for the one who gave his life, nothing is a sacrifice. It goes back to loved ones or sent ones or loved ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. I'm going to ask you for a preview in a little bit, but any
Okay.
other like parting shots from today and yesterday or
No, I don't think so. I think what we talked about, wrestle with your identity, friends.
yeah.
Wrestle with it. Be honest with God. God can handle any question.
That's so
he,
good.
He can handle your anger. He can handle your frustration. If you're angry and frustrated about your own identity, if you're frustrated with how things are going in you, be honest about that. Express that. He can handle it. And in that space of authenticity and vulnerability, your authenticity and vulnerability create really fertile ground for Jesus to come alongside you and God to do a work in you. So be honest about that. Reconcile that in yourself as we move forward. I think that's a great place to start, and really understand how God views you. It's so important for us to understand what God thinks when he thinks about us.
Yes.
What we think about God's important, but I really think it's more important that we understand what God thinks when he thinks about
Oh
us.
my goodness.
And how loved we are, how proud he is of his children, and how strong his desire is to have a relationship with everyone, with us and all of our neighbors by his definition. So,
Okay, so that's gold. That's gold. And to bring it full circle, I couldn't help, as you were talking, I couldn't help but think about you describing the baptism service at Bay City. See, this is why church matters. Not only do we have to wrestle with that and embrace that, but we need to be around people who affirm that.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? So streams of life flowing into our lives that are life-giving, right? And I love how you said, some things bring death, but these bring life. This is why church matters, so that I am in a place where people see me as this beloved son, beloved daughter of my Heavenly Father, right? For who I am, not what I do.
Yes.
And because there's enough of that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so good, so good. So, sneak preview.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I get some sermons are hard to preach. This one is a fun one.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I get to convince people to do something that's going to be really good for them and really good for everyone else, right? So,
Okay.
we're going to talk about celebrating Jesus. So we're going to talk about sharing our story, which is something that not very many of us do well. And so if we're available, going back to the week one, to allow Jesus to use our story, we can tell the story of our life with Jesus, and it can not only encourage us and give life to us, it can save other people's lives. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is celebrating Jesus in our story with other people, learning to make it just a natural part of what we talk about. And it doesn't have to be like, it is not the sharing my testimony of like what I grew up under. I remember people coming in and like a Sunday night service, and people would share their testimony,
right.
And it was like these extreme things,
right.
And like all this darkness, this craziness, and drug addiction, and I was in a biker gang kind of thing, and then Jesus came in and changed everything. We think of that and we're like, I don't have a story like that, but we need to recognize God's resurrection power in our story, and when we do, man, when we recognize how powerfully he moves through everyone's story, that everyone has an amazing story to tell, I think maybe we'll be more willing to share that story. God's power is in our story, whether we realize it or not. And it's his power in our story that matters, not the crazy details. And, it's God's power in our story. And there's someone that needs to hear the story that we have to share, who, though we may not realize it because we don't think we have this amazing story to tell, they identify with some element of our story. And like you were talking about earlier, there's so many voices that speak into someone coming to an understanding of faith and what it looks like to have a relationship with Jesus. And it's not something that happens out of nowhere. It's something that builds over time. And so, that's the preview. It's going to be fun to help our people celebrate Jesus as they tell the story of their life with Jesus.
That's got to fire you up, people. I can't wait to hear it myself. And so, hey, it's been great to share the podcast with you today. Fun. And thanks once again for joining us today. And as always, we invite you to come along next time when we take a deeper dive.
Thank you for watching the Deeper Dive video podcast. To check out our full library, make sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. Also, make sure to select the bell icon in order to be notified of any new content as it is posted. If you would like to give to the Lord here at Hopevale and support the ministry, you can give by visiting hopevale.org/give. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and your family at Hopevale Church.